10 Overlooked Stories from the Wild Northwest of Canada. While the Old West often captures the spotlight, the uncharted territories did not end at the U.S. border. The wild Northwest of Canada was equally rugged, lawless, and brimming with extraordinary narratives, many of which have faded into obscurity. From audacious gold rush adventures to enigmatic disappearances and infamous outlaws, the Great White North harbors its own collection of forgotten tales, filled with excitement, peril, and resilience. In this video, we will delve into history to reveal 10 fascinating yet lesser-known stories from Canada's wild Northwest. If you have a passion for Old West history with a Canadian flair, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss any future explorations into the past. The Fraser Canyon War. The Canadian West frequently grappled with conflicts that stemmed from the South. In 1858, a surge of American prospectors descended upon Fraser Canyon, eager to strike gold during the rush. While a handful found success, the majority became embroiled in a dangerous and escalating conflict. Tensions were already high between the newcomers and the Indigenous Nlakapamux people. The sudden arrival of miners disrupted traditional territories, causing unrest among local tribes. The situation escalated dramatically when a serious offense against a Nlakapamux woman prompted immediate retaliation. The tribe confronted those responsible, and their fate served as a dire warning to others. Panic spread among the prospectors, igniting intense debates on how to react. Some called for extreme measures, forming groups determined to take aggressive action. Meanwhile, Nlakapamux leaders perceived the growing hostility as a significant threat that necessitated a robust response. Both parties prepared for what appeared to be an unavoidable clash. A series of confrontations ensued, escalating the conflict further. Reports of alarming findings along the river began to circulate, heightening anxiety on both sides. The region was on the brink of full-scale war until Governor James Douglas stepped in. Leading a group of forces, he entered Nlakapamux territory to facilitate peace negotiations. The talks proved to be difficult. The Nlakapamux expressed significant concerns regarding their land and community, while the miners sought assurances for their safety. In the end, Douglas successfully negotiated a settlement, persuading both factions to de-escalate. His commitment to provide military support if hostilities persisted was crucial in achieving this tenuous peace. Although the immediate threat was averted, the Fraser Canyon War had enduring repercussions. It underscored the profound rifts between Indigenous peoples and settlers, hinting at future conflicts over land, resources, and sovereignty in the Canadian Northwest. In the spring of 1873, a group of Piikani warriors from Alberta crossed into Idaho, aiming to assert their presence. During their journey, they encountered American wolf pelt hunters. Tensions flared rapidly, resulting in the Piikani seizing the hunters' horses and returning to their camp, confident that the Americans would not pursue them into Canada. However, the hunters were determined to retrieve their stolen property. They gathered a posse and followed the Piikani northward, crossing into Canadian territory. Driven by anger and a thirst for revenge, they rode into the Cypress Hills, expecting to confront the Piikani. Instead, they stumbled upon a camp belonging to the Assiniboine, a distinct and peaceful indigenous group uninvolved in the earlier altercation. Unfamiliar with the distinctions among various tribes, the Americans mistakenly believed they had identified their targets. Fearing imminent resistance, they initiated an attack, catching the camp off guard. The Assiniboine, taken by surprise, sought refuge, but the armed group misinterpreted their actions as hostile. In the chaos that followed, 22 individuals from the Assiniboine community lost their lives, with the majority being women and children, as the camp was comprised of families rather than a war party. This tragic incident later referred to as the Cypress Hills Massacre, highlighted the perils of lawlessness on the frontier and the catastrophic effects of unrestrained violence. The event significantly influenced Canada's decision to create the Northwest Mounted Police, aimed at establishing greater law and order in the area while revealing the underlying tensions between settlers and Indigenous populations. Bill Miner, known as the Gentleman Bandit, was born in Kentucky but did not remain there for long. Enticed by the excitement of the frontier, he moved westward and embraced a life outside the law. His adventures ultimately led him to San Quentin Prison, where he spent several years incarcerated. Upon his release, he turned his attention to Canada, convinced that the expanding West would present new opportunities for his illicit activities. Renowned as the Gentleman Bandit, Miner earned a reputation for his polite demeanor. Their main product was a homemade liquor referred to as bug juice, a potent concoction of ginger, molasses, red peppers, and chewing tobacco. The Blackfoot exchanged their valuable belongings for this liquor, which rapidly developed into a perilous addiction. The repercussions of this trade were catastrophic. Chief Crowfoot of the Blackfoot voiced his concerns, articulating how the whiskey was wreaking havoc on his people. It was leading to the disintegration of traditional life, with men committing acts of violence against one another while intoxicated. In an effort to safeguard his tribe, Crowfoot relocated them several times, yet the whiskey traders relentlessly pursued them, aware that the Blackfoot remained loyal customers despite their attempts to resist. Upon the arrival of the mounted police at Fort Whoop-Up, they found themselves lacking any concrete evidence to hold the traders accountable. Although they seized the alcohol, the absence of proof of illegal activities beyond the whiskey itself limited their ability to take action against the traders. Consequently, the two American individuals engaged in the illicit trade continued their operations unimpeded until their deaths, amassing wealth without facing significant repercussions. This inability to bring the traders to justice highlighted the difficulties faced by Canadian authorities in maintaining order in the West, particularly when confronting influential and elusive merchants. Despite their initial achievements, the Mounties would soon realize that enforcing law and order in such a vast and wild territory was a formidable challenge. The establishment of Fort Whoop-Up was not a solitary endeavor. It was guided by Jerry Potts, a half-black elk and half-Scottish scout. Potts was instrumental in launching the operation, but as the detrimental effects of the whiskey trade began to impact his life, he transformed into one of the trader's most ardent opponents. His early years were marred by violence and sorrow. As a child, he witnessed the murder of his father, a Piakani warrior, at the hands of another tribe member. This traumatic event ignited a profound rage within Potts, leading him to track down and kill the perpetrator by the age of 16. Potts's awareness of the destructive nature of the whiskey trade deepened shortly after he became involved in founding Fort Whoop-Up. A fellow tribe member, known as Good Young Man, succumbed to the effects of alcohol and, in a drunken rage, killed his own mother and brother. This horrific incident spurred Potts to seek vengeance once more. For an entire year, he relentlessly pursued Good Young Man, and when he finally located him, the man attempted to escape on horseback. Potts dismounted the horse, effectively halting the chase. From that moment on, he committed himself to tracking down individuals involved in the illicit whiskey trade. At first, he took direct action, pursuing and eliminating the whiskey runners who had inflicted significant damage. However, with the arrival of the Northwest Mounted Police to restore order, Potts decided to align himself with them, utilizing his expertise and experience as a guide. By the time he began collaborating with the Mounties, Potts had already claimed the lives of over 40 individuals, the majority of whom were whiskey traders. His narrative underscores the intricate dynamics between indigenous populations and settlers during this era. Although Potts initially collaborated with the traders, the detrimental impact of their operations ultimately transformed him into one of their most relentless and adept adversaries. His endeavors would influence the history of the Canadian West, where the complexities of maintaining law and order frequently resulted in unforeseen partnerships and conflicts. When Sam Kelly and his gang set their sights on a town, immediate action was crucial to apprehend them. They could swiftly appear and just as quickly vanish into the expansive, muddy badlands of Saskatchewan, a rugged landscape characterized by caves, cliffs, and deep ravines. This region served as an ideal refuge, allowing Kelly and his crew to easily blend into a labyrinth of twisting tunnels. Kelly's foray into criminality began with a bold venture to Montana, where some former associates were incarcerated. Armed with a jailhouse key obtained from a corrupt deputy sheriff, Kelly managed to enter the prison, liberate the inmates, and exit unnoticed, save for a courteous nod to the sheriff's wife as he departed with 2 felons. This marked the beginning of Kelly's criminal trajectory. He gained notoriety for stealing horses and cattle from ranches in Saskatchewan, and he occasionally ventured into the United States to hijack trains carrying gold. His audacious exploits created such significant disturbances that the Royal Northwest Mounted Police established a fort in the treacherous Badlands, aiming to capture him. Yet each time, Kelly skillfully evaded capture by disappearing into the wilderness. After years of living a life of crime, Kelly made the unexpected decision to surrender. However, his meticulousness had one advantage: law enforcement lacked adequate evidence to prosecute him for any offenses. Despite his voluntary confession, there was nothing the authorities could do but release him. Kelly had outwitted them all. This narrative underscores Kelly's cunning and daring approach to criminality, as well as the difficulties faced by the mounted police in their efforts to enforce law and order across the expansive and challenging landscapes of the Canadian West. Harry Wagner, known as the Flying Dutchman, was once part of Butch Cassidy's notorious gang. Following Cassidy's capture, Wagner executed a bold escape by stealing a ship and sailing north, where he began to instill fear in the bays of British Columbia. His ability to navigate the waters quietly and quickly earned him the moniker the Flying Dutchman. Wagner's criminal career came to an end in 1913 when he attempted to rob a general store. 2 constables, alerted by a light in the window, entered and caught Wagner and his crew in the act. A shootout broke out, during which Wagner shot one constable and even bit off the thumb of the other. Nevertheless, the remaining constable managed to overpower him. It soon became evident to the officer that Wagner was no ordinary criminal. His history as a member of an outlaw gang had made him an internationally recognized figure of infamy. Wagner was imprisoned, and his fate was sealed. Before his execution, the hangman made a chilling remark to the assembled crowd, stating, "I'm out to establish a new world record." With a constable marking the time, the executioner promptly ended Wagner's life. As the crowd observed the swift execution, they erupted in applause when the hangman proclaimed, "Gentlemen, gentlemen, you have just witnessed 11 seconds taken off the record." This narrative not only highlights Wagner's elusive and perilous criminal history, but also emphasizes the harshness of frontier justice during the early 20th century. His life, characterized by audacious escapes, violent offenses, and a record-breaking execution, illustrates the grim realities encountered by both criminals and law enforcement of that era. In 1887, James Gaddy and Moise Rosette met at a bar in Saskatoon. After enjoying a few beers and discovering their mutual affinity for mischief, they forged a pact to become horse thieves. To commemorate their new criminal alliance, they even took a photograph together as a keepsake. Their initial theft involved stealing a horse from a man named Hector McLeish, who was far from an ordinary victim. McLeish was a resolute and vengeful individual who was not willing to let the theft go unpunished. He quickly assembled a posse and set out to track down the thieves. McLeish, along with his companion Constable Matthewson, soon discovered the boys' hideout and informed the rest of their group. The strategy was to wait for additional support before taking action. But when they spotted Rosette preparing to depart on the stolen horse, they opted to act immediately. Unbeknownst to them, Rosette's father was also inside the house. Upon witnessing his son about to be apprehended, the elder Rosette attempted to intervene. During the ensuing struggle, Constable Matthewson was caught off guard, and in the resulting chaos, McLeish was shot and killed. Now branded as murderers, Gaddy and Rosette fled, but they had neglected one vital detail, the photograph they had taken at the bar. The photographer retained a copy, and soon the faces of the two thieves were widely circulated across the country, accompanied by a $500 bounty on their heads. They were apprehended shortly thereafter, and in 1888, both individuals faced trial. Their brief yet violent criminal endeavors concluded rapidly, serving as a stark reminder of the dangers associated with a life of crime. The Mad Trapper of Rat River remains an enigmatic figure, with the origins of Albert Johnson, known as the Mad Trapper, shrouded in mystery even today. He appeared in the Yukon seemingly out of nowhere, lacking any discernible background, and soon began pilfering furs from local trappers. His unexpected arrival and peculiar conduct led to numerous complaints, prompting an RCMP officer to visit Johnson's cabin for questioning. Upon the officer's arrival, Johnson remained completely silent, fixating his gaze on the Mountie without answering any inquiries. This silence only enhanced his enigmatic reputation. Undeterred, the officer returned with an arrest warrant, but once again, Johnson did not utter a word. Instead, he calmly drew his firearm and shot the officer, initiating a pursuit that would extend for weeks. A group comprising Mounties and trappers set out in search of Johnson. Over 3 days, they engaged in a tense exchange of gunfire, with the officers even resorting to dynamiting the roof of his cabin. However, Johnson managed to survive and escape, utilizing the cover of a blizzard to disappear into the wilderness. Despite the severe winter conditions north of the Arctic Circle, many believed that Johnson would not endure for long. Yet, he defied expectations. For 48 days, he skillfully eluded capture, navigating the rugged mountain terrain and even using a herd of caribou to obscure his tracks. Ultimately, on February 17, 1932, the officers located him at Eagle River. There, Johnson made his final stand, engaging in one last confrontation with the authorities. In the end, the Mad Trapper was brought down, but not before he managed to shoot one more officer. His demise in the Arctic, following nearly 2 months of evasion, solidified his status in Canadian history as a notorious individual with his true identity and intentions remaining ambiguous. Johnson's narrative underscores the determination and resourcefulness of a man who overcame significant challenges, successfully avoiding capture in one of the most inhospitable environments imaginable. The enigmatic aspects of his background and his dramatic conclusion further enhance the fascination surrounding his life and legacy. The McLean Gang. In 1879, the McLean Gang, comprised of 4 teenagers from Fort Kamloops, British Columbia, grew excessively self-assured. They believed themselves to be untouchable and beyond the law's reach, treating the small, remote town as their personal playground. The boys regularly stole horses and paraded through the streets, boasting about their criminal activities without any fear of consequences. However, Johnny Usher, a resolute local resident, was determined to challenge their arrogance. He gathered a group of men and set out to confront the McLeans at their residence, demanding their surrender. The boys, however, were not inclined to back down. They responded to Usher and his group with a hail of gunfire. Usher, misjudging their readiness to escalate the situation, believed they were merely attempting to intimidate him. Thinking they were simply thieves rather than killers, he dismounted from his horse, approached them, and commanded them to lower their weapons and surrender peacefully. Instead of complying, the boys assaulted Usher, knocking him to the ground. As tensions heightened, young Archie McLean, only 15 years old, drew a revolver and shot Usher. This act ignited a violent chain reaction as the other boys, driven by rage, shot Usher multiple times and desecrated his body. They then rode into town, flaunting his blood-stained clothing as a symbol of their defiance. Nevertheless, the McLeans' reign of terror was destined to come to an end. A larger contingent, consisting of 75 heavily armed individuals, arrived to apprehend the gang. The McLean brothers were swiftly captured and sentenced to death. In his final ruling, the judge condemned them, asserting that they possessed no redeeming qualities. This unfortunate narrative underscores the perilous outcomes of unrestrained youth rebellion and the inevitable repercussions of their actions. The initial hubris of the McLean gang, coupled with their violent offenses, determined their destiny and secured their place in the annals of Old West history as cautionary examples. The untamed northwest of Canada is replete with countless forgotten tales, each contributing to the intricate yet frequently neglected fabric of its past. From audacious outlaws to enigmatic figures who disappeared into the expansive wilderness, the region's stories serve as a reminder of the resilience, intrigue, and mystery that characterized the early days of this land. If these narratives have piqued your interest, consider subscribing for more in-depth explorations of the overlooked aspects of history. The Old West was not merely a southern frontier, it extended far and wide, offering a wealth of stories yet to be discovered. Stay tuned for more accounts that are often absent from traditional history books.